it's better now that they put the little road through, is that people don't park in their own house.
No.
Go with confidence and then have a trailer park to buy their drugs. So then I still see them coming in and out of the entrance of Mammoth. They're just parking down in our neighborhood and jumping the fence.
I'm all about private property, right? I hope one day.
Yeah, my house up my room. I have a smiley face that was gonna be a short.
I'm
You
sure.
put a swastika on your house, I'm gonna burn it down.
So angry.
I'm not gonna drive.
Hey, do I gotta sit between you two?
I'm not gonna drive by that every day.
The first one.
All right, I gotta stop. Oh my goodness, we got scouts tonight.
I'll have a big smiley face painted on his roof. He told me if one's gonna be a swastika.
I have in the morning.
Nobody gets to see it? So can you see it from the road?
Oh, perfect.
When I go fly, it sticks out like, wow, it's wonderful.
Where your house is at all times.
Oh, I wonder-
I'm not doing big piece.
Are we ready?
You should see it from the back.
We're done.
Yeah, it's
We're
already
running.
All right. Welcome to our city council meeting for tonight, October 16th, 2019. We will begin our meeting tonight with an invocation by Pastor Barb Sharp from the Trinity Lutheran Church, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by our scouts from Troop 1857 and 1861. Pastor?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I'm honored to be here tonight. In October, we celebrate the Reformation in the Lutheran Church, and I have a Bible verse that's particularly loved by the Lutherans. It comes from Paul's letter to the church at Ephesus. The prophet writes, "For by grace you've been saved through faith. This is not your own doing, it's the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." Amen. Heavenly Father, you have preserved your words for us. Give us ears to hear the wisdom of your word for our time. May those of us chosen to leadership always pursue and preserve your high standards for our city. Cleanse us from all unrighteousness and keep us on the way of faith. Keep in faith all here today who hold your Son, Jesus Christ, as their rock and author of their salvation. Attend each of us who take part in tonight's meeting. Cleanse their hearts and fill them with love and concern for all the citizens of this fair city. Keep the leaders of this city free of avarice and love of money, which would separate them from your Son. Jesus reminds us, take care and be on guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. May all who participate in today's meeting acknowledge your wisdom, and may every act of this council be undertaken to your glory and the strengthening of your reign here in Cedar City. Bless all here today with wisdom and grace, and bless our city, that it endure and prosper under your loving care. In Jesus' strong name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Free of money.
Wherever you want to be. That's fine.
Okay. Will the audience please rise? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The audience may be seated.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much to our scouts for coming tonight and for participating. We will now move on to our agenda order approval, and this is for the amended agenda. Are there any items the council would like changed from the published amended agenda? And if not, can we get
Move to approve the agenda.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll now move to council business.
Mayor, we have a resolution that is just about running its course, one that we made to continue with a 25% reduction in the,
15.
was it 50?
15%.
15. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just using your email, by the way.
Fat finger, sorry.
Okay, 15% reduction in those fees for a period of time. I know we have a
Back fee study.
study that's going on, and I know it's not going to be done by the time that this resolution runs its course. I'd just like to add to the agenda in our next meeting a discussion of that and pass something that will continue the reduction until we have the study in place.
Okay.
Is that okay?
When do we think we'll have that information on that feasibility study?
So the vendor emailed us a week or 2 weeks ago with a list of information that he still needed. Right now we're waiting on some public works engineering type information, and that's the last chunk that we'll need to supply to the vendor. After that, the vendor needs some time to compile everything, do the analysis, and give us a draft. So it's still going to be weeks out.
We're looking at December, or do we know?
I'm really hesitant to give
Okay.
a date. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
It should have been 2-3 months ago, but
Yeah,
it's
but I
not.
thought so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When does it sunset?
The existing resolution sunsets on the
November
5th.
5th. The
November
5th of
5th.
November.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would need to be on the next, so it will be on the action agenda for our next meeting. Does that work? And that way we can discuss everything.
And then we can take the uncertainty out of it for those who live by that resolution.
Okay, are there other,
The Redmond water tank is complete. The bills were all paid today, and so that's done. It's regardless of the name that's on it or whatever, that tank has a good coat of paint that's well needed. It was had hundreds of rust spots and peeling paint, and those were all fixed. They were sanded down to the metal and spot primed, and that was painted. The building in front of it was painted. The eaves were painted, so it looks good.
and the years look good on it.
Yeah, that turned out nice. Thank you. I've heard great reports from several on the IT services in Cedar City that things are going well with our local vendor, and happy that we're getting some good reports there. So that's all I have.
Okay. Are there any other items? Remember, at the end of this month is the Livestock and Heritage Festival. Sheep will be going all down Main Street. And just for your reference, November 2nd, that next Saturday, is the Storybook Cavalcade Parade as well.
Congratulations on the city's sheep. I think it looks wonderful.
Ani
Nice
did a
job.
spectacular job. So.
Yeah.
Okay, we will move on to staff comments. There any? No? Okay, then we will move on to our public agenda with our public comment portion. If there's anyone that would like to address the council. No one? Okay. Then we'll move on with our business agenda, the public portion, with item number 1. Consider vicinity plan for Blackstone PUD Phase 1 and Phase 2 located at approximately 800 South Cove Drive.
Ron Larson. I'm with Three Peaks Engineering in Levitt Land. This map right here actually shows the whole thing, which is what we took through city or planning commission. The problem we've run into is was until when we started doing the construction drawings on this, we found out that there's actually a inundation study that was done when the dam was built that shows if it ever broke, the water would run right here.
Right where, I'm sorry?
Right here.
Okay.
So right through this. So what we've, obviously we've backed up, the city engineering is working on exactly what that all means and what we need to do. So what we're actually asking for is that our phase 1 and 2 be approved with the first 4 buildings right here. Do you have the phase 1 and 2 map? Anyway, it basically, it doesn't show these maps, these buildings, because we don't know what's going to happen
It's
there.
also in your packets.
So we know.
The front buildings, correct?
So just these first 4 from the north end, 1, 2, 3, 4,
That was
is
sideways in
phase
my
1 and
packet.
2. And that's just so they can get started. They're up high enough, they wouldn't be affected by anything. And then in the meantime, we can resolve what's going to happen here as far as, how much water we're talking and what we're going to do. So. And this is part of the RDO. This was, there's a total of 103 townhomes in here if you did the whole entire thing. But this first 2 phases, phase 1 and 2, is only 26 units.
So in terms of roads, what roads will be there in the first phase 1 and 2?
Well, as part of the subdivision behind it, this road is going, and this is a public road right here on the left. And this road right here is going to go in as a second access. So those 2 roads are public. And then what we'll build is we'll come off of this north road right here, and we'll build this front one and the rear driveways of those first 4 buildings.
And I noticed there was some discussion, I don't know if it was in the planning commission or just in our packets, but about the facing of the buildings, and they might change in the construction drawings or something?
No, I don't think that's changed. They basically the whole design of this is that this street down the middle is basically all the buildings face that street.
Okay.
But they park and they enter into their units from the back.
And there's visitor parking there in the
So
front.
there's visitor parking in the front, and then each unit has a 2-car carport and 2 cars behind that. So they could park up to 4 cars. So that may have been what the discussion was. So the front of these, they have front doors, but they don't have the garages and stuff are all in the back. So the people will drive around the back of them, and then you'll have this street, basically like a kind of a main street looking streetscape down the middle.
Are there any
Oh,
additional?
it's relative to phase 3. It says they have the city checking in this and a larger building on the. They may flip that building around to face interior. That's all part of phase 3.
I can explain that. This building right here, I can hold it still. That building right there faces out onto the public street, and that is not going to work. So that'll be changed as we get to those phases.
I see, and you may just do a similar thing.
Either flip it around, or it might just come parallel to this one and put it right here. I don't know yet.
I knew I'd seen something about that.
Yeah, that was something that came up, and we were working through it. When we found out this flood thing, we stopped worrying about that.
And these all have individual landscape yards and things of that nature, correct?
Yeah, but it's all common area. It's all taken care of. Yeah, the front part of these, you see the parking lot here and parking there, and there's sidewalks. Everything else is landscaped. Okay. In the back, it's mostly driveway into their units, but in the front of those, it's all landscaped all the way down.
They carports or garages?
They're carports on the townhomes. There's a unit here there's single story, and they have a garage. There's a couple of those, but the majority of them just have carports.
So is there still a side obscuring fence up on Cove Drive then?
Yes, so all the way around, basically all the way up here and along Cove Drive, that'll all have a 6-foot block wall, 10 feet back with the landscaping in front of it. The only place it doesn't have it is where you drive in.
Then you mentioned 2-story, 3-story possibly. Are these first ones?
Originally, it was going to be 2 and 3 stories. Now they're 2-story and single story. That's it.
Okay.
So there's some that are a little bit bigger that have 3 bedrooms, but they're still 2-story.
Right.
And then the smaller ones are 2-story with 2 bedrooms. So the original plan did have 3-story ones, but they would get too expensive.
And these will be sold, correct?
Yeah, they need to be something that people can afford to buy.
So on the lake issue, is that something that just came up that you weren't aware of?
Yeah, well, during the review of our maps and that's when it came up. And so we don't want to wait for all that. So we're just going to leave that out for now, and then we'll see how that needs to be done later. So.
An unrelated question, how do you think that would affect the ice rink proposal?
The ice rink's pretty high up. If the ice rink's up on that hill right there,
Should be
it's
okay.
up pretty high. The problem is that the low point of this whole side is right there. So if the water ever did flood down there, it'd fill. I mean, the baseball diamonds would hold a lot of water, but at some point it would overflow, and that's right where it would come out is right there. And so that's something we have to figure out. First of all, how much water are we really talking, and some of the ways to take care of it. The drainage will have to be piped or whatever through and down and out over the edge down here out into Cross Hollow Road. So, which is where the drainage goes anyway, but we just don't want to hold everything else up while we wait to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any additional comments, questions? Good with that going on?
How wide are those?
Will you come up and talk in the microphone if you're going to talk?
Oh, I'm just asking how wide the streets are going to be.
The driveways in the back here and here are 26 feet wide, and the one in the front's about 30 feet wide. So,
Okay.
easily 2 traffic and wide enough for the fire trucks and everybody else to get in
I
there.
just wondered if they were wide enough with those 90-degree turns and stuff.
I'm not sure. We haven't really finished construction drawings yet. And that would come up during the construction drawings as to how what the radiuses are and if they're good enough.
I think that's a question that would be good to know, though. That's a good question.
So, does council want this on the action or consent? Consent?
Consent, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, item number 2, consider final plat approval for Fort Cedar Commerce Center PUD Phase 3.
Dallas Buckner, Go Civil. So this is the Fort Cedar Commerce Center Phase 3. It's the 5 lots. We're just projecting the road out a little bit further from Phase 2. That's about it. It's part of the PUD.
Are the roads going east?
Yes. Yep. So north is facing to the left. So yeah, the roads are getting projected further to the east, and I think it's like 150 feet or something like that. It's just enough to get those lots in.
Tyler left a note that said we have everything we need on this except for the letter of credit. We have communication from the bank that says it's in process and should be here by next week. So just so you know.
Okay.
Do you want to mention until we get that?
Yeah.
Are there any other comments, questions from council?
No.
Okay, we'll put this on action until we get that letter.
Thanks.
Thank you. Item number 3, consider the sale of city property located 800 West and Coal Creek Drive.
So this is a piece of property that went through the planning commission for disposal almost a year ago. And they gave a positive recommendation to dispose of this piece of property. We started our process, came through the city council in March, and the council said, sure, go ahead and dispose of it. We went to the appraisal, and the proponent, of disposing of that property saw the appraisal, and that's where it died. So Mr. Adams has property Kate in that area, and he's interested in us disposing of this piece of property again. So we as staff said, all right, we already know the planning commission's okay with disposing of it. We'll just bring it back to the council. We'll start the process again at the point where council could say yay or nay on disposal. Then we'll go to the appraisal. Then we'll go to the RFP and take those steps in the process.
Are we talking about both pieces of property on the north and the south?
Well,
800?
You just state your name.
yeah, Kate Adams.
Thanks.
Sorry for the apparel and time to change, but the one that they originally was looking at was the one on the south. I guess it's more east, but could be smarter than the pen. Was this piece?
Right.
I'm actually more interested in this piece, but it's by the time you do the setbacks, there's no room for anything there. But I have my units right here. It's pretty ugly. I was gonna landscape it and do something with it. I doubt that I'd be able to have any room to do anything with all, because they put a 3-foot culvert right through here to drain all the water. Then the 20-foot setbacks, it leaves like a 20-foot by 20-foot square in the middle. That one I would like to clean up a little bit and do something with. So I'm interested in that one as well. This was the one that was approved a year ago. It's a little bit better, but it's also got a storm drain that comes right through the middle of it to catch all the water in Coal Creek. So that's the one that was proposed last year. So I guess both of them at this point, if possible. I don't know what Tyler, he was supposed to be here and then he asked me to come this morning. So I'm not sure what he even had said in the letter, which piece it was. So
I know they're not big pieces, and I understand that. I questioned it even last March when we did this. I guess my question is, I'm just always a little nervous when we start disposing of city property. I know they're not big pieces, and there's not a lot that we can do with them. I just want to make sure that it's the right decision for us to dispose of it.
They're not very large, and they do have a lot of utilities and storm drains located underground upon them. So building on them is kind of difficult.
Yeah, if you remember,
our discussion was about the road.
Yeah,
the
I struggled
widening
with
of
the width
road.
of the road when we originally set it at its standard.
And I had a little bit too of that same heartburn with it. Now, all the way through to Industrial Road, do you know if we still own the property widths to make a wider road through there, or is it just at this intersection?
No, we don't own the property going south of this. It's all private property.
As far as on the sides of the road?
Of 800 West?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we don't own that.
We'd have to tear some
So-
alleyways out, redo that.
So we couldn't make a wider road even if we retained that property then?
If you remember, staff came through a year and a half or 2 years ago and amended the master plan to actually shrink the width of that road. And that was brought through and approved, and that's the road width that we're projecting out. Like any other road, if we have a certain road width, when private property develops, that's when we acquire the right of ways for the roads. So the roads 800 West south of this point, any right of way we need, we'll have to acquire when those properties develop.
Okay.
But we don't have plans to complete that road any time in the near future. 800.
Not until those properties develop.
Okay, I'm not sure that was clear to us. At least it wasn't clear to me last March.
If those properties were to develop, we would proceed with punching the road through.
Okay. So back to the property at hand. I guess recognizing that they're not big, I understand, and of course, Mr. Adams has property right there by it. I know there's a lot of public easements and utilities in there. I don't know.
So would you like this on the action agenda?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When the road went through, Mr. Wareham had told me that they would be worthless to the city when he was done, and he would hope that I would do this. So I don't really have a lot of use for him, but I don't know if it's a project he didn't want to deal with anything. I don't know. That was last year, but anyways.
Well, a little landscaping sounds good. It's better than what's there now.
Yeah, it is. So, okay.
So next week they'll vote on whether or not to proceed.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. And then it has to go out for bid to the whole city anyways. So this is.
Tyler will go over the process with you. There's an appraisal process and it goes out for bid. And,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, item number 4, consider the assignment of a city lease with Schmidt Construction to Staker Parson Materials and Construction.
So, excuse me, this is the lease for the mining rights on a piece of property leased by Phil. It's right across from the airport. It's in one of our approach zones for the Crosswind runway. We've had this lease with him for quite some time. He's seeking to assign it to a third party. The basic assignment says that this third party, which is Staker Parsons, sorry, would assume all the obligations that Mr. Schmidt has. And that includes allowing the city to recharge water in the pit on the east end of the property that doesn't belong to the city. So that provision would follow along with this assignment.
Are there any other comments, questions?
All the same conditions would apply.
Everything that's in our agreement with Phil Schmidt would transfer to the agreement with Staker Parsons.
Okay, can we go with that going on the consent? Okay, we'll move on to our staff portion with item number 5, consider bids for the golf course pond storm drain materials. You're getting to be quite a fixture.
Yeah.
Here.
Steve Carter, the golf course superintendent. We put out some bids through the engineering department for some storm drain that we're going to use to reroute the storm drain that comes underneath number 3 fairway. And it used to just exit out onto the right side of number 2, and it would run down the drainage ditch and then into another storm drain that took it off of the property and out into the street. But we're going to do about 610 feet of it, I think, is what it is. And those were the bids from Geneva Pipe. It was $55,524.23, and the Old Castle was $56,359. And so we would just like to go with the one from Geneva Pipe and move forward on that. And things are going really well out there. If you ever get the chance to drive out behind number 3 and see that the hole that is being dug there, the street department is just doing a great job. They're moving fast, and just can't be more happy to have their help. And it's awesome to have a community or a city effort in that. And we're working well with the engineering department, trying to get the rest of the stuff set and ready to go. So,
Steve, was this project pre-budgeted? Was there an idea of what this might, and how did these quotes land with that?
so it's well within budget. When we originally, it was with RAP tax funds that this project is. Well, it's still being paid with RAP tax funds. And originally, I think it was about $65,000 to $70,000 that we thought that it would cost, and it's came in well under
So
that.
you're well in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Great. Thank you.
Are there any
anything
other
else?
questions?
That was my only
Okay,
question.
we're good with this going on consent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, item number 6, consider surplus auction items.
Ryan Marshall, Public Works Director. It's just that time again where we've got some surplus that where you need to put it out on our auction, our online auction. As you can see in your packet, it consists of several vehicles, some small tools, a tank, and some meters. So it's kind of a small list this time, but we'll put that out to bid with your approval on the auction site and see what we can get on that. So we're just asking for your go ahead to put those up.
Those are old vehicles.
Yeah.
Well used.
All right, comments, questions? You good with this going on consent?
Yeah.
I know that you're going to want to bid on some of those vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
For grandkids.
Yeah. Item number 7, consider amending the city council meeting schedule.
This was the amendment that was proposed
Yeah, this
last
is what we
week
talked
to
about.
get rid of the last meeting in December. We would just have a work and an action in December and call it good.
An action, work, and an action.
Sorry.
Yeah, it
action,
probably
work,
wouldn't be a good idea to meet on Christmas Day. It would not be so good anyway. So
It wouldn't be well attended.
All right. Are there any questions with that proposed schedule? I mean, this is what we talked about last week. So, okay, we'll put that on consent.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and then our last item, item number 8, consider or discussion of the city's water billing procedures.
So this is, and I got permission from Dave to read this email tonight. He couldn't be here. And all of us on the council received this email, so we've had time to look at it.
And just for record and all that, Dave Staley, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Dave Staley. And I'm just going to read this, and I was hoping that we could have a little discussion and possibly even maybe some more discussion next week and maybe even vote on something so we can get this taken care of to some degree if we can. Dear City Council, as you recall, Wallace Lim of Cedar City petitioned the City Council a few weeks ago to seek a way to pay the city for his past due water and utilities bill in order to have his water service restored for his family. It is clear that Mr. Lim is in a pit that he does not have the current capability to get out of on his own, and it continues to get deeper with with additional fees and penalties each month. During the discussion, several of you offered to join in the effort to help him out of his hole. And these are the bullet points that he makes. On 10/14 of 19, I paid the principal balance of $1,816.37. This leaves a balance of about $2,600 for penalties and late fees. Excuse me. I have spoken with Mr. Lim, and he will pay an additional $200 on his own account by noon on 10/15 of 19, which is my understanding he did that. Okay. Mr. Lim has also committed to pay $200 extra each month towards the remaining balance on his account until it is paid in full. Under the current balance, this will take him an additional 12 months. And this is what Mr. Staley is proposing. I am proposing that the City Council consider accepting some or all of the following actions in their listed order of priority. 1, that penalties and fees on the remaining balance of Mr. Lim's account will not continue to accrue further since the city's principal balance for unpaid utilities is now cleared and Mr. Lim has committed to a monthly debt reduction plan. This condition could be withdrawn if Mr. Lim defaults on his monthly commitment. 2, that water service be restored without a reconnection fee immediately after Mr. Lim makes his first $200 payment on 10/15 of 19, or that at least his $200 payment will cover the reconnect fee. 3, that those of you who volunteered to contribute toward the remittance of Mr. Lim's past due balance, please make whatever contribution you feel is appropriate at the city's utility payments counter as soon as possible. And 4, that the city will be willing to reduce the fees, penalties on Mr. Lim's account as suggested by Adam Hahn during the City Council meeting, a common action taken in the private sector and even by the IRS to help people get back into financial stability while meeting their obligations as negotiated, since the actual cost of the city for these services will be met. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
And can you email Renan that copy?
Yes, I'll do it right now.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So can I tell you what the city does?
Sure.
Before we alter it. Currently, we do have the system we've had in place for a long time. There is a process which allows those people that have been receiving notice that their water is going to be shut off, that they can delay that. We'll do that up to 3 times a year for anybody that calls and asks for a delay in that shut off. During that time, they can have the opportunity to bring that bill forward. That's one thing that the city has on the books that we can do. The other thing is there's an agreement that's possible that the city can reach with the rate payer, the customer, but it only goes for 6 months. And it's a 6-month agreement to say that they've got to come current within that 6-month window. We don't have the ability to go out. I'm not sure how long, Mr. Lim, 12 months. We have the ability to go 6 as long as they come current within the 6 months. So those things are already on the books. They're already things that staff can do. They were inadequate in Mr. Lim's case. What staff has done is after Mr. Lim came to the council, Jason came the next morning and asked if there was a way just to discontinue the account so it didn't keep accruing penalties. And we did that. I'm not entirely sure we had clarity from the ordinance on whether or not that was permitted, but we did that because we're not supplying him water. I suppose he's still getting a benefit from the storm drain and the sewer. I don't know about garbage. But we discontinued his account so it doesn't keep accruing. So that's what we have done. That's what we can do. If you want to change something, then that's up to the council. They can make that recommendation to change something.
So clarify for me the 6-month plan. You can actually enter into a plan for payment that would extend catch up for 6 months.
Yeah, but you'd have to catch up
No, I
within the 6
understand that.
months.
I understand that, but that would give us an opportunity to work out getting contributions and other things and helping him get whole.
Do you want to explain
Just
how that agreement works?
A little history on this. There was a time that I can remember when we had different staff in different positions that the city manager had a lot more ability to waive stuff. And this is my recollection, so please take it for what it's worth. It's by no means gospel. The finance guy got sideways with the city manager over his practice of waiving stuff and came to the council with the ordinance we have now that limited management's ability to waive stuff. Now, I'm not advocating for a blank check to management because I don't think management should ever have a blank check on this or just about anything else. But that had been a practice of the city. I want to say we changed that practice probably at least 10 years ago with the people that were in office at that time. So we have had different practices in the past.
So could we change that maybe to a year? I mean, it just seems like these people that are in this hole can never get out, and so, and the first thing I say, and I don't blame the city because with computers, eyes aren't always seeing things. It's just racking up right behind the scenes. And so it's not your fault or the city's.
We've got over 9,000 active accounts.
Exactly. So
and if somebody's going to shut it off, it's got to be the customer.
Right. But I know he had some other issues where he was, and my understanding is this water bill or home was in his grandmother's name and he was in jail. And so
I think his mother's name.
Was it his mother's or grandmother's?
No, it's in his grandmother's name. The home
It's
is
in one or the other.
Doesn't matter.
I think that's what Tom had told me, that it was in the grandmother's name. And so it'd be nice if we had some way to flag an account so that it's a stopgap so they couldn't get in the hole so deep. Maybe we shut off the water if they're in arrears 3 months or something so they can't get so deep in trouble.
We do shut them off after they're in arrears for 3 months. That's when they go on the shut off list. And that's when they're told, if you don't come current, we're going to discontinue service.
How did the principal get up to $1,800 then?
But the principal that we charge on those bills is not just for water.
Right.
It also covers storm drain and sewer and garbage. So while we can shut the water off, we don't have an adequate method to shut off sewer. That's just something we don't have a way to shut that off. Conceivably, we could go retrieve the garbage can and garbage, but I don't know if we did that in this case. Storm drain is impossible to shut off. It's a service that's there and needs to be compensated for. I think what the bill he did receive was the base minimum water bill. Just by looking at it real quick, Monday afternoon, it was the base water bill.
I just think if Mr. Limbs makes an effort, a good faith effort, and I think what Mr. Staley's proposing is reasonable, and I hope that we could staff come up with something this next week that we could vote on next week so this gentleman could get his water turned back on or something so we can help him. I mean, my concern is he's got an infant child in that home with no water, and I'm sure he's hauling it in with buckets or barrels or whatever. But
we're set to meet as staff on Monday or Tuesday.
Monday, right?
I think it's Monday.
Third Monday.
That's when we'll have the necessary people back, and we're set to meet Monday.
Where we've all received this email and had time to read it and think about it, can we, based on your meeting and ideas, can we be prepared to vote on something next
We
week?
can
Or
put
is that,
something on the action agenda.
could we do that? Okay.
Just don't know what the proposal will be.
Right.
So is council, I know Mr. Cousins is amenable to a 12-month agreement. Is that something that the rest of the council is interested in entertaining? instead of a 6-month, because right now we could do a 6-month repayment agreement. Are we interested in extending that out to 12 months? I'm assuming with that repayment agreement, they got to come current. If they default, then we're back to where we were.
See, I know I haven't made the payment that I pledged, and I need to do that in the next week. There are others. That
I do too.
pledged.
I will.
And when we do that, we may
it's
get
not
to a point where the
$2,600.
6 months
Will
will
be
be very,
sufficient,
very manageable. And then we don't have to change something that really shouldn't be protracted beyond the 6 months. So
Yeah, but even if that's the case, if he's paying $200 extra a month, after 6 months, that's $1,200. He's still
so
$1,000 away from.
So that means 1,000 or 1,200 has to be donated.
Right.
So big picture, I mean, you'd be changing a policy citywide that would impact everyone.
No, that's
Not just the one
Right,
person.
that's
So
why
you
we're
need to
wondering if we can
think
keep it within the 6 months.
Yeah.
With donations and whatnot, that we wouldn't have to change that policy.
So let's encourage all who are willing to donate to this to do that between now and close of day Monday or something. And then let's see where we are. But we would love to see what staff comes up with.
Yeah, council, we just need a little time. I mean,
yeah,
we can figure out how to get the water situation resolved, but there's some philosophical things, such as Tyler's mentioned circuit breakers. I mean, our purpose is not to charge late fees or penalties. That's not the purpose. Is have adults pay for their service and be adults. So we've got to figure out circuit breakers that gives us the ability to help people simply pay for their service. We don't want to see $2,000 of fees and penalties. We're not trying to generate income by penalizing users. We're simply using those mechanisms to help them be adults and pay within a month. So I don't know that we want to extend 12 months. I mean, these are just philosophical things we really need to discuss. I mean, 12 months is a long time for a monthly service. So if we need to address when water service is restored, that we might have to have some ideas on
Well, look,
that.
if this is on the action agenda, we can clearly discuss it next week.
Sure.
So I think it's a good opportunity to come back with some further discussions after you've had your opportunity to meet as staff and we talk about it with the understanding that we'd take some kind of action next Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah, there'll be, so we'll have it on the action agenda. We'll get you some ideas. And between now and then,
I mean, I'm not trying to push it, but if we wait, we're going to have to wait. It's going to delay it a whole nother couple weeks.
Well, yeah, and the weather's going to change here real quick.
And I realize this is difficult. They always are. These are the hardest situations because it affects so many people, and you don't want to set a precedent that you've got to get you in a mess with. And we don't want to become the bank. I realize that. Maybe, Jason, could we maybe on these accounts, instead of penalties and interest continue to accrue, if we're not in the business of making all that money, could we max it? Could we have a max?
That's a question we've had, right? Because in theory, this thing would have compounded and we'd have $10,000 in penalties and fees.
They never get
what
out
would
of
be
it.
the purpose of that?
Exactly.
So
they never get out of it.
we just need some better solutions to.
Right.
We ran on this particular account a little analysis that in 2017, when the account became delinquent, adding up all the penalties and fees, it wasn't that much relative to what it is now. In 2018, you could start to see that curve accelerate. 2019 was the worst.
Sure.
As far as total dollars. So maybe we can use those numbers and
That's why I was wondering if we could possibly, like Jason said, we've got to figure out a way so nobody gets in this situation again and develop a policy. So then I kind of hesitate. I know limbs need to get their water back on. That's critical. But I hesitate to do anything money-wise because when we figure it out, do we want to, if we end up changing a policy, like apply that policy to his bill and go from there? Because he might only owe the $300 from the first year of penalties. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we have another gentleman who shut his own account off, and basically he's going to pay back a certain amount until he's squared up, and then he'll shut it back or turn it back on. Sorry, I'm rambling. So there's the potential that maybe as staff, we're going to suggest we need to look at all accounts in some certain situation, and we might just have to retract fees.
Well, and one thing,
Take care of. So that's why I say before everybody spends a bunch of money on the fees, I don't know what we're going to bring to you yet.
Okay.
So
and Mr. Staley called me before the meeting again, and we talked, and he said maybe the city, and he was just throwing this out there, is maybe the city has a get out of debt free day where everybody comes in and gets current and they're all square, right? We start out fresh.
Courts do that sometimes.
Right.
Sounds like a board
Maybe we
game.
think about that, right? So if we're not in the business of making money on fees and interest, maybe we give people that opportunity. Say for 3 days, you can come in and pay your bill and be square. And maybe the city actually benefits by getting some bills caught up too.
And I think during staff's analysis, something I've thought about on this is you've got to review other accounts that are similar. And you as staff, whether, it's Wendy or whoever, I'm sure they've had phone calls with, a multitude of situations since we have over 300 delinquent accounts. If we're going to do something, I think it's only fair to all the citizens that we apply whatever we do to everybody that's in a similar situation. Now, determining some of those maybe aren't as far behind. I realize that. When I glanced at the list, I noticed, I don't remember exactly, but there was probably 12 or 15 that are over 4,000. So that's a huge amount. So similar situations, has their water been shut off? And I know a lot of them on the list are not up to the shut off time, that applies with the ordinance. So I just think we have to be careful when we do that to be fair to everybody and see, I don't know how we'd ever in the world determine everybody's situation. Everybody's got a story. So it does make it tough.
We do hear quite a variety of reasons why people have fallen behind. And we hear that every month when we get that shut off list published. So if we're trying to set something based on the reason why they're behind, that's going to be really hard. If we try to set something based on amounts, that might be somewhat easier. But again, all accounts aren't equal. My house is not that big and my yard's not that big, so I'm not going to use as much water as the guy up the street who has a double lot and it's all landscaped, right? Or has a bigger home. So we got to take that into account too.
Yeah.
So we'll come up with something for
Well,
next
thank you.
week.
Appreciate it.
So action agenda.
Yeah. And with that,
Move to adjourn this meeting.
Wait.
Second.
Go ahead.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
You were too slow at the draw.
Oh, you were too fast.
Well, and that could be my fault.
No, it's okay.
I was just going to suggest that we make sure, put discussion of management, having some oversight in this, so it doesn't have to go to council for the small things, because if we're going to keep our management, we need to trust our management to do the right thing. I know, it's true. I trust in you.
Oh, we need to stop that.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
God, we trust.
So who's buying ice cream for the Cub Den?